£250 million back to the government. Mr. Noonan, the finance minister, he's on the tape, email statement. You're ready for an IPO. We can smell it. Let's tie down the timeline. Will you go for an IPO? Do you think it's appropriate? The market's in a sweet spot. Will we get it away before the first half?
So I think the Minister, his statement from earlier in the year said that the Q2 was the first opportunity. I think these results demonstrate that the bank is in a strong position, strong performance in terms of profitability, strong net interest margin, good growth in lending activity across the franchise and very strong capital levels, as you say, supporting that first dividend since 2008. So I think the bank is ready. I think the market, in terms of the Irish market, good growth in the Irish market, unemployment below 7% for the first time again since 2008. So I think the market it's ready, the bank is in good shape, and it's really a decision for the Minister at this stage.
A decision for the Minister, but I suppose really what the market wants to know is the market really is in a sweet spot for banks at the moment. Do you think it'll be at the start of Q2?
Yeah, I think it is a sweet spot at the moment. So, as always in these things, you try and get a market in a good condition, and hopefully the story works at that point in time, and the economy is in good shape, and all those things are right. So, Q2, from all of those perspectives, would certainly seem like a good time to go.
Does the politics, good morning to you, Bernard, does the politics come into play here as well? We understand that the Irish Prime Minister has been from time to time under pressure to step down from his position. Obviously, you won't want to comment necessarily on his tenure, but does political consideration come in here? Could that change the conversation if we were to see different leadership in Ireland? Could that delay an IPO?
Yeah, I think most parties probably believe that an IPO is the right thing, that the state shouldn't own the banking sector, and it's a good thing from a national point of view to get the debt down, and also from a policy point of view to have that separation between the bank and government. So I think all of those things are aligned. Obviously, if there is a sort of fracture point in terms of the politics, then that would have an impact if somebody wasn't in place to make a decision.
Bernard, I'm going to be very generous to you now. Your impairment loans are coming down year on year. They're down at 9.1 billion, down from 13.1 billion. Can that trajectory continue for you? What is achievable in terms of impairments and seeing those bad loans go down?
Yeah, well, we've come from almost 30 billion down below 10 billion to 9 billion, so 70% reduction over 4 years. So, you know, we've got a good machine built at this stage. We've 1,500 people who work through these solutions on a daily basis, and we do get a lot of solutions delivered every week with our customers. Our target is to get well below the European norm at this stage, so that this issue is very much behind us. We know we're well provided. So I think between ongoing restructuring and then looking at any other option in terms of getting that 9 billion or 5 billion net as it is now lower, we're going to take them, and we're going to make sure that this is addressed.
You're going to take any option, you say. There have been suggestions that the bank might want to sell off impaired loans. Is that something that you're looking at as an option, Bernard?
Yeah, I think looking at some of those portfolios that we've been working at for 5 years and seeing is there another option which could include a portfolio sale, that would be on the cards.
What's the appetite? I'm always curious to know. The government owns 99% of you, give or take a percent. What do you want out of this IPO, Bernard? Do you want cornerstone investors? What's the appetite out there? Have you tentatively touched the market? What kind of cornerstone investors do you think that you'll get in this IPO process?
Yeah, we've stayed close to the market so that we have a good understanding of the appetite that's there. So I think at the moment there's a strong level of interest in AIB and in the Irish story. And AIB is seen very clearly as being a good barometer for the Irish economy and a good way to invest in the Irish economy. So I think we wouldn't necessarily see a need for cornerstone investments to get this one moving. I think you would expect to see the traditional long in funds taking a position in this. It's a good play in the Irish economy, and it's a good income stock with some decent growth potential. So our perspective at the moment is there's lots of interest and there's lots of people who would find this attractive.
Lots of interest, and you set out the investment case for us there around the Irish economy and what you're doing on top of that. But looking at the stress test that we saw last year, Bernard, AIB was the second worst performer in those stress tests. When you speak to investors, you say you've stayed close to the market. When you speak to investors, do they raise that as a concern? Is that something that worries them about getting involved in an IPO?
I think once investors look behind and understand how those stress tests were constructed, they understand that firstly, the way the tests are done, it's very penal on countries that have high non-performing loans, which we did. they're static balance sheets, which means they don't look at the momentum in the business, they don't look at the profitability, and they don't look at capital restructuring that's taken place. So two very simple things. In the year, we generated 1.7 billion of profit. That's 260 basis points of profit. That would be an addition straight away. And we retired the COCO, the convertible instrument, during the year. That's another 1%. So between those two items alone and ignoring everything else, you see a huge change in terms of our capital position over 12 months. We're a fast-moving bank that's improving quickly, so I think investors understand that.
Indeed. Let's talk about interest rates, because it's just no sign of the European Central Bank in any mood really to raise rates. The market doesn't think until 2019. How's your fee income growing? How do you move the growth story forward for investors in an ultra-low negative rate environment, Bernard? Where are you eking out the gains?
Yeah, well, I mean, the first number that you mentioned it yourself earlier, our net interest margin finished the year on average at 225 basis points, but our exit NIM is 242. So we've always said that getting into that mid-twos is a target for us. We think that's an attractive net interest margin and one we can sustain. The second point is that the market is now well poised for lots of growth. The housing market has been quite subdued for a period of time, and we expect the mortgage market to effectively double over the next 3 years as that activity level rises. We've a 36% share of that market, so you're going to see plenty of balance sheet growth coming from that market. And then just activity across the board in Ireland is strong. As I mentioned, unemployment down below 7%, 65,000 new jobs created and filled last year, and heading down towards below 6% this year. So that activity is driving SME, and so for the first time in 8 years, we're also beginning to see SME loan volumes net across the country rise. So you have lots of positive activity, and we think we're going to get growth.
So that's the positives in the growth story. Bernard, have you seen any impact from the Brexit vote on your business so far, and what are you bracing the business for?
So we have a business in the UK. It's about 10% of our income, about 14% of our assets. We did notice around the time of the Brexit vote a slowdown in SME activity. It's an SME business in that marketplace. So that had some impact at that stage. Since then, I'd say that the market has certainly normalised, and barring some currency-related issues, so businesses that are very sensitive to currency moves have been impacted. Everything else has been probably more positive than we would have thought. In terms of the Irish economy, the key sectors that are going to be impacted are some of the agri sectors, particularly something like beef that exports heavily to the UK. So there have been some sectors, but in general, it's been quite muted.
Bernard, just one very, very final question on the Brexit issue. Many people are talking about where banks may re-domicile themselves. How optimistic are you that you could have new friends round the corner from you in Dublin? How optimistic are you that European and global banks will relocate to Dublin?
Well, I think, again, size and scale are relevant here. So obviously London is a huge financial centre. Dublin is an important financial centre, but at a totally different scale. So I think there will be some relocations to take place. I think that anything that happens will be meaningful in terms of its impact, positive impact in the Irish economy. But I don't think you're going to see the entire of London relocate to Dublin.